Good afternoon for everyone joining us today on this HE Learn and Share webinar. I can see we're lots of people joining, so we'll just give people a minute or so to come through. So welcome to everyone joining. It's great to see people on the webinar. If you want to pop a hello in the chat, we can see who's online, who's listening in, and where people are from. That would be lovely as we wait to get ready. So welcome everyone joining to the Learn and Share webinar. Very excited today to be able to share our guest speakers' experience with you. Hello, Lisa. And Laurie. Hello. All right, well, we will, I think, get going. Welcome to those joining now. Lovely to see you, Avril. Thank you for your note. Hello. Right, we will get going. So to start off, what's to come in this hour? A very exciting lineup for everyone today. So first of all, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to People Insight. There are a few people on the call who we don't know. So we'll give you a very brief intro, and then absolutely delighted to be able to share the experience and to allow Kings, Laurie and Sue to talk today about all of the amazing work that's been going on at Kings. I'm not going to give too much away now, but it's a great lineup to talk through their experience. We've then got time for some question and answers, and we have had a few questions through already, which is great. If there are any that come through or you think about as we're going through the presentation, then pop them in the chat, and if we can't answer them, we'll try and answer them after for you, and I will do my very best to do a very quick wrap up at the end. So let's get going. In terms of a bit of an introduction, well, for many of you, you'll already know, but for those new people to People Insight, here at People Insight, we really believe in supporting, making the HE sector a great place to work. We believe in making action happen post-survey. So it's not just about the survey, it's around the action and that momentum. Challenging, we love challenging, sharing best practice, as we're doing today, and looking at possibilities. And our products, our services are intuitive and user-friendly to help you get the most out of your listening activities. How do we do that? Well, we've got a great platform and technology that we can scale. It's quick, it's intuitive. Our people, our amazing people that work here, the expertise, the skills of the team to help support, flex with the design, interpretation, and the action side of things. So making sure that once we do a staff listening activity, we're looking at what happens next and the action side of things. I always say this, but it's true. We're very, very privileged to work with so many universities on their staff listening activities. Not one university is exactly the same. We provide lots of different services based on their needs, strategic goals, and the vision, where we want to be, and the journey and how we want to get there. We're delighted that each year we welcome more and more universities to our client list to support them with their listening activities. And as a result of working with so many universities, we're able to provide really strong benchmarking, but also, as we're doing today, sharing best practice so we can learn together and grow together. We also like to put case studies together. We've just shared the Liverpool John Moores University case study on LinkedIn, and we also share non-university case studies as well. So we've got our Fish and Richardson one looking at outside the sector, which you can access. I'm pleased to say that our next Learn and Share, I've already lined up the next person, which is going to be Debs from Durham, talking about their experience and their staff listening activities. So thank you, Debs, for that. So pop it in your diary the 16th of April. We're also going to be at UHR. We've got a slot there at their annual virtual conference, and that will be with Nottingham University. So we've got a slot on the 15th of May at UHR. And also to mention that we do have our Outstanding Workplace Award, which is based on some criteria which needs to be met in the staff survey. So we can talk more about that if you wanted to, but I wanted to put that up because we do like to recognise outstanding workplaces in the sector. I am not going to talk anymore. What I'm going to do is hand over to Laurie, first of all, to share with you their experiences of staff listening.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to People Insight for inviting us in to talk. Hopefully, you'll all get a lot of insights from our journey, but as a bit of an introduction, I'm Laurie Gallagher. I'm the Staff Survey and Data Manager at King's. As a bit of background, I've been working at King's for give or take 8 years. I've been in a couple of teams across HR, but primarily I've got an analytics background. So my previous role was working with the digital services teams, looking at HR operations service delivery. I joined the organisational development team in June last year to start managing the staff survey. It's been, what, 7 months, but a lot has happened and loving the role. But it's a lot. And as you'll soon find out, I will just invite Sue in. Sue, do you want to just give a bit of a background?
Thanks, Laurie. Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Lee. I'm the Senior Organisational Development Consultant at King's. I'll be talking through the whirlwind of a communications and engagement journey that we've been on. My background is in communications. So I've worked at King's for over 10 years, and actually that's the area I joined King's to work in. But I now work in organisational development, leading work on strengthening our workplace culture and staff experience here at King's. This is the first large-scale survey that I've ever worked on. So while I'm really delighted to have been asked to join you and share our experience by People Insight, I'm really under no illusion that we're not the experts on this call, and I'm hoping that we can learn from everyone else here, as well as sharing what we have to talk about today.
Thanks, Sue. So if we just jump into it, because we do have a lot to share with you today. So just a bit of an agenda. I thought it would be useful just to set out what we're going to go through. So I'm going to go through and set the scene. So look at where we are now in the journey, what some of the background behind delivering the staff survey, why we delivered the staff survey. Then I'll go on to look at some of the key milestones that it's taken to get us to this point. I'll then hand over to Sue, who will look at, explore why our comms and engagement was such a key to our success. Sue will then pass back to me. So I'm going to look at what we did to support the institution with basically taking on board their own results and how we supported the action planning. And then we'll go through some reflections of what went well and what we would have done differently if we had the opportunity. And then look at what's next for 2024. So where are we now? I can happily say that we've just completed what I consider to be our first full cycle of the end-to-end staff survey process. So at the moment, our Vice-Chancellor is doing roadshows across the faculties and directorates to share what the organisational action plans are, and also giving an opportunity to local areas to then feedback what they're doing within their own leadership teams. Just a brief overview of where we've come from. So we started, I won't go into procurement at the moment, but we definitely started the preparation for the staff survey about this time last year. So we came up with 48 question sets. We then delivered the staff survey over 3 weeks from the last week of May up until the middle of June. I've just spotted a typo. So we are thrilled with a 60% participation rate, but we definitely did not get 66,463 responses because we only invited 11,000 people to answer. So that's actually 6,463. When it came to action planning, we successfully captured on time 180 local action plans. And we've also, on top of that, got 12 organisational action plans. And as of today, we've got 35 completed actions. In terms of background, so the last time we delivered this, any sort of all staff survey was in 2017. Now, I appreciate the 6-year gap seems quite significant on the surface, but there are quite a few contributing factors in that. So between 2017 and actually 2018, once we started looking at actions, we've had some significant changes across the senior leadership team. Most notably, we've actually changed our principal, or we've brought in a new vice chancellor who started in 2001. We also had a big pandemic that I'm sure we all appreciate has changed the working landscape. Crucially with that, we chose not to then go out and do an all-staff survey, because actually we were focusing a lot of pulse surveys locally across different faculties, but also across different community-led networks. What we've also been doing between that time is running, and you can see it on screen here, a lot of other staff voice engagement opportunities, events, and we've been encouraging our workforce to actively get involved in a lot of the networks you see on the screen. When the Vice Chancellor came in 2021, he started a campaign to go out and actually he wanted to do his own individual feedback session. So he went out to the university and was collating as much information as he could. Off the back of that, he had highlighted that actually we as an organisation do need to invest in an all-staff survey campaign or project. So we actually got a 5-year investment to deliver regular all-staff surveys across the university. This is very high level, but I've put a high level plan that you can see on screen. So year 1, which we've just completed, is the all-staff survey and action planning, which we're starting to implement. Year 2, which I'll talk about later, we're going to look to do focus on how we're performing and how well we've embedded some of those action plans, and then looking to do an 18-month pulse survey. Then next year, looking at, again, running an all-staff survey. And I'm going to be honest, year 4 and 5 is TBC, so we're still trying to work out what that looks like. Then, and I won't go into too much detail here because I'll hand over to Sue in a second, who will talk more around this, but I think one of the biggest keys to our success is we had very high buy-in from our King's leadership team. From the outset, the Vice Chancellor was present and leading a lot of our engagement sessions, talking about the benefits and why getting our workforce to contribute and inform us on how they feel, how satisfied they are working at King's, and actually why it's important that we drive actions at a local level. And then, not unique to King's by any stretch, we've got ongoing industrial action and union negotiations across the sector throughout 2023. So that's the background. If we just go into why, so why did we feel we had to deliver this all-staff survey? Firstly, we needed to establish a baseline, really to enable us to measure and understand our strategic priorities. In that, we also wanted to benchmark how we're performing at a local level and organisational level against the sector, specifically focusing on the challenges that are happening across all HEIs. Although we've delivered a wide range of staff engagement activities since 2017, we also needed to establish a vehicle to collectively and strategically tap into the staff voice. We also felt that we had a real opportunity to develop a sense of belonging amongst our workforce, and we needed to come up with ways to support and shape our strategy 2026, and a key driver of that is our thriving staff community. So that's the background and the why. So I'm briefly going to go through this because I appreciate a lot of people on the call have either been on the journey, starting the journey, but these are some of the key milestones that we've delivered as part of the end-to-end staff survey process. So we've got the procurement process, which I won't go into. I'll let you read for yourselves. Preparation, which I'll go to in a second. We then did deployment in June. of last year. Once we delivered the survey and we got all of the results, we then, the following month, shared what those results look like at a organisational level, but also at a local level. We then supported the university with coming up with organisational action plans and coming up with local action plans across the university. And then where we are at the moment is the implementation stage, which is us supporting and consulting on how we actually get those actions embedded and what that looks like, and then going into how do we measure that those actions are actually having an impact across the organisation. So I thought a significant part of this process and why I think it has been such a success is looking at the preparation. So we were tasked, and we were given quite a short time frame to do this. We were tasked with coming up with the design, the look and the feel, the data scope, and just an understanding of what the survey will look like beyond the survey delivery. We were given a couple of months to do this. I think in hindsight, which I'll go through later on in the presentation, we may have looked to increase this preparation stage. But some of the key activities here is we ran a number of workshops and engagement sessions to design and finalise our question set. We pulled in experts from our IT department to support us with some of the platform testing. And we also, as a team, looked to train our survey leads out across the university in their roles and responsibilities in the process, but also how can they drive a lot of the engagement activity at a local level. In terms of data gathering, which is sort of my bread and butter in a way. So one of the activities I was brought in to do from day one when I started the role was define the data scope. And something our Vice Chancellor was very committed to was being able to drill down into some detailed data. So that was not just looking at faculty level, but that was drilling into divisions and then departments. It was identifying who we actually want to be involved in the staff survey. So we took the decision that we would include the workforce as it is on our HRMS, but also looking to bring in our hourly paid staff, a lot of our graduate teaching assistants. We also have support teams in Cornwall, bringing those into the staff survey so that we've got a wide range of employee voice. Another important aspect was ensuring that the data we held in our HRMS was valid. So we asked our colleagues and our leadership teams out across the university to validate their own data in our HRMS system, which is the gold source of our people and organisational data that we then exported from our own systems and then loaded into People Insight. And then the other key bit was just training our support desk to answer any of those questions around data that may come up. I've purposely left comms and engagement blank because I'm going to hand over to our expert, Sue, who will be able to talk through comms and engagement in more detail.
Thanks, Laurie. So yes, as I said earlier, working on this project was a real ride. We were all sort of working at pace, at scale, with limited resource. So I sort of really need to say from the outset, I'm so grateful to Anya, who is part of People Insights Comms and Design team, for guiding us through the process, really. And we couldn't have done it without you. I see you're on the call, so thank you. So the first thing we did was to look at developing a visual identity. And when we did this, we had several things in mind, I suppose. So we needed to develop something that would speak to staff across all grades and roles and cultures, and to make it feel really inviting, inclusive, and accessible to everybody. We wanted our survey title and sort of strapline to be very clear and direct. This kind of meant no puns, although I love a pun, no jargon, no clever messaging. It was very much on the sort of less is more imperative. And it had to work alongside our wider strategic piece. And of course, we had to work within King's brand guidelines. So something recognizable as King's, but that would stand out against many of the other sort of competing communications campaigns that are always there at King's, including other surveys that were happening at the same time for students. So here's what we have had for the one of the first iterations of the design work, and it ticks a lot of the boxes I mentioned in the last slide. So simple, clear, compelling, brand compliant, and so on. And what's different here from our usual brand is that we used cartoon imagery rather than the typical stock photography or in-house photography that's more often used at our university. And it took probably about 6 or 7 iterations to move from that to this. But what happened was, in true sort of old university style, we had this signed off by committee, and it wasn't a comms committee. It went to our senior vice president for people and talent. It went to our vice chancellor's office. So really, lots of people having a perspective and opinion. One person saying they wanted more trees, another one saying that the dark figures on the left looked menacing, someone saying the buildings in the background needed to be less distracting, and on it went. So it was quite excruciating at times, going back to the designer and saying, can we just make the people 5% bigger? But on reflection, I feel on balance it was worth it, because right from the get-go, this was a way to get our senior leadership bought in to the whole process and happy with something that they'd ultimately be sponsoring. So with our brand in mind, we then turn to look at raising awareness about the survey and building a sense of anticipation. So this was all about positioning the survey as being a university-wide priority and different to anything we'd done before. What helped us hugely was bringing in our senior leaders, as Laurie has alluded to, and they were very happy to be interviewed and to share blogs outlining the so what of the survey, giving their own perspectives on what they wanted to hear from staff, and really having this very strong message that this wasn't an HR exercise, this was coming from them. Our Vice Chancellor, who you can see on the right there, took to centre stage, literally, to emphasise his own commitment to taking action on the survey. And he did this repeatedly in the run-up to the launch in emails, staff meetings. And crucially, one really important aspect, I think, was having meetings with our wider leadership team. So I think that's about 300 people. He face to face, he spoke to them, gave them an opportunity to ask questions, and these are our real key influencers at King's, so that was a very important part, really, to bring them on board. He also made 3 clear promises to staff, including his personal commitment to share all the results, even if they weren't positive, and also that he'd be personally accountable for action being taken. And I think this was an incredibly powerful message that lifted the survey onto everyone's radar. So we also built intranet pages, did introductory videos, and used our sort of usual communications channels to let everyone know about the launch date. What I think took time here was providing quite detailed FAQs, and that was especially around the use of data and reassuring colleagues about confidentiality and anonymity. So these sections of our comms, particularly for our academic community, were just as important as the questions relating to, you know, the why and how of the survey. And still in pre-launch stage, we then moved to look at how we could make it as easy as possible for staff to take part. So we created postcards, posters, digital screen images. And this image was everywhere across King's for a long time. We made good use of a QR code that would direct colleagues straight to the survey to complete on their mobiles. We're also very mindful of bringing managers on board. So we know our staff at King's are more likely to read information from their direct line manager rather than a King's Central newsletter, for example. So our manager's how-to guide was really a valuable asset to share. Is where also our strong communications network at King's really came into play and came into its own. We had a whole raft of resources and template emails for them to use in local comms, and these prompts gave each area an opportunity to have a script, but to put their personality on the communications and make them sound authentic. And there's an example there of a snippet from one of our executive deans. And then more sort of practical pre-survey tactics that we use were translating our assets into different languages to reach our large population of Spanish and Portuguese speaking staff. Finally, we went live, and our attention was then turned, into really reinforcing moments throughout the 3-week live period of the survey. And here's where we had a little bit more fun, I guess, to catch people's attention and be a bit more playful with our communications. So we got to use our puns, and when we're talking about our incentive scheme, which was around planting trees, and you can see people having a sort of nice conversation in a Viva Engage post there. We also used a hidden surprise incentive. Every person who completed the survey was greeted with a thank you pop-up message at the end, inviting them to go for a hot drink and a snack from one of our cafes and restaurants. And we purposely didn't include this reward in our official comms. We didn't want it to come across as a bribe. So we let word of mouth do the talking, and very quickly it was shared by colleagues in more creative and fun ways. One thing I think Jane was saying we had some questions on was around things we did for non-desk-based staff. And while the survey was live, we did set up some computer rooms for them. But I think in hindsight, I'm not sure we'd do this again, because pretty much everybody now has a mobile phone, and sort of armed with a QR code, most can navigate that mobile phone. So even if they're not particularly tech savvy, I think that was the sort of area that would help more than offering laptops and PCs for people to complete their survey. What we found was more critical for these staff was really to get the buy-in of their managers and making sure their managers were giving them the time and permission to complete the survey. So doing this during working hours also, and not in place of a break, was key. So yeah, again, sort of that line management engagement, so important to get them on board. What else did we do? We created a few digital nudges while the survey was live. Here we've got a Teams background that we encourage people to use, as well as a digital email signature, which had a link straight to the survey for people. And a little bit of healthy competition can be motivational. So we sent league tables to our leadership team every so often. They were kind of quite sort of informal in a way, celebrated and recognized areas who were doing good stuff around social media, and yeah, lots of sharing of best practice really on how people were driving up their response rates. As Laurie said, we ended up with a 60% response rate, not 66,000, but 6,000-ish staff, which I think was overall a really positive result. I know it's not the best result across PI's clients and slightly competitive there, but no, I think it was a solid first year, and it did exceed our internal target. And we went straight into result sharing mode. It was really important to us to get our results out very quickly and transparently. And I think Laurie's going to talk a bit more in detail about that. But really, it was about getting those university results out. But then local leaders were given a little bit more time to digest and reflect on their own local results, get some coaching with people in site to yeah, so sometimes there were difficult messages that they needed to consider themselves before sharing with their own staff. My involvement in this project then moved quickly into more traditional OD support. So this was really offering support to local teams to help them develop and shape their responses to their feedback. You can see here there's a Teams channel that we've created for everyone who's working on the staff survey actions. And this is a place where we're encouraging people to share their best practice, their opportunities, their challenges, opportunities to work together. We've developed a whole load of guides to tackle common themes, and we're also sharing a weekly Friday survey shout out just to have that regular drumbeat of posts that celebrate good practice that can be adopted in other areas. We've, of course, published an action plan now, which I think Laurie also will talk about. And again, our Vice-Chancellor has been great in taking the lead in communicating the plan and the key messages. So now we're focusing on making sure that everyone keeps talking about the survey and we don't just let things go now. I'm very much encouraging our comms leads again to link new initiatives and activities back to the results. We have over 35 actions completed, and we need to keep an eye on these and get ready to launch our sort of version of a You Said We Did campaign, which we're hoping to do in the summer. Name to be decided. I think we want to tie it in with the original brand and call it Your Voice Counted. If anyone on the call can think of something better, please email me. And so it is very much an ongoing piece of work that we're doing now. And before I hand back to Laurie, again, I just want to say a huge thank you to Anya and Pallavi for your advice, guidance, and patience throughout this process. It's been really great to work with you, and I'm looking forward to the next stage of our journey together. Over to you, Laurie.
Thanks, Sue. A big shout out to Sue on that. I think as part of just the whole end-to-end process, as I say, a big factor in why we were so successful is what we've done in that space, and just hats off. She's been brilliant, so a big round of applause for Sue. Also apologies, I think I was driving the slides there and I was a bit out of sync, so if they're out of sync, that's my fault. Now going into what I feel was actually a real value added part of the process, which was how we supported as a team, but also pulling in the team from People Insight. So Lisa, Jane and Kate, you've done a phenomenal piece of work around this, but this is looking at how we were sharing the results across the organisation, not just at an organisational level, but also at a local level, and then going on to build out some of the action plans. So it's a bit of a timeline. I know we're pushed for time, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. So in terms of sharing results, once we delivered the survey, the team at People Insight did a phenomenal job at getting some of the key themes and highlights from the staff survey at an organisational level, so we can reinforce the momentum and actually share what our employees were saying about working at King's. Once we got that initial messaging out, we invited both Lisa and Kate to come to 27 individual one-to-one coaching sessions for half an hour, where myself, either Kate or Lisa, would sit down with local leadership teams and actually go through a tailored look at their own survey results. Something that we really wanted to reinforce was a summer break. So we encouraged, and this came out of the survey results itself, to do with well-being and workload. We wanted to reinforce a summer break throughout August, at which point we said, no sharing results across the organisational or local level, no action planning. We'll take the month, that's a summer break, and then come September, we shared organisational results in more detail at an all-staff forum. Having shared the results, we then challenged the university to come up with locally managed action plans and organisational wide action plans over a 2-month period. We tried to align them as close as possible, so they were running in parallel, but in reality, what we found is the local action plans were being created, and actually they were then feeding into what we were looking at, an organisation plan. So I think if we just look at what we did in terms of the locally managed action planning, in September, well, we asked, so it was a big ask, but we asked all of our local leadership teams to come up with 2 to 3 action plans per area, so across the faculties and directorates, and we gave them 2 months in which to come up with those plans. I think in early September, there was a point where myself, Sue, and the internal project team looked across the table, and we all agreed that actually at this point we possibly weren't providing enough support to our local leadership teams, and we felt that we were inundated with questions around what was the expectation, what should local areas be doing in terms of local action planning. We consulted with the team at People Insight and decided that what we would actually do is run another 27 tailored coaching sessions for an hour, where we would invite Lisa and Kate to come in with myself and give local leadership teams the chance to basically get advice on what their engagement activities should look like across their local areas. So how should they share results, and how should they get additional feedback? They also had the opportunity to sense check their reflections on their results, so that we could feel comfortable that the results were understood, and actually some of the key challenges and successes were being pulled out of the results. We also initially tried to on the call, but actually just had to offer further support, but support in coming up with the 2 to 3 actions for those areas. And off the back of that, we also offered additional support and services that would not just last the 2 months, but would be then developed upon over the coming year. And as a result, by the 31st of October, we managed to get 180 local action plans. In terms of breakdown, we could see where some of the key themes are coming out. So there's a big focus on diversity and inclusion, big focus on learning and development. So this isn't necessarily the organisational action plans, but this is what's happening at a local level. Just to go into more detail, so all of the actions that were in those themes are to be owned locally by local leadership, measured by local leadership. And in terms of the additional services we offered, I've just given an overview. So we actually worked with Jane and the team to come up with additional services that People Insight would be able to offer. It would have to be managed locally, but happy to say that we had a number of our faculties take us up on the opportunity. One faculty in particular was very quick to take this opportunity, and with the help of Lisa, they ran 10 of their own tailored workshops for that faculty to try and delve into taking what's come out of the staff survey results, but actually do a deeper dive into what some of the challenges are across the faculty. And we are already starting to see some successes in that space. So with that said, faculty, we have been able to make some significant improvements in what we're seeing in terms of the survey results. So we ran the staff survey, all staff survey in June, and then following the workshops that Lisa ran, we then did a mini poll survey within that faculty, and as you can see on screen, we've made big impact in that area, certainly around the belonging, being valued at work, and crucially, do our colleagues in that faculty feel like action will be taken off the back of the activities that we've been doing. Then, in parallel, we looked at the organisation-wide action planning. Again, we identified, with the help of People Insight, 6 key areas that we needed to focus on. And then against each of those 6 key areas, we identified 2 to 3 action plans against each theme. Crucially, all of these action plans, each action within the action plan is to be owned by a member of the senior leadership team. They are accountable for the delivery, and they will then be sharing what that looks like in reality. We're sharing those currently at the moment through the Vice Chancellor roadshows, and we will be monitoring and measuring them centrally. So that's the end-to-end process. I think it's worth just looking, and I'll go quick because I'm conscious of time. It's worth looking at some of our reflections. So looking at what went well, I think engagement was one of the big ones. I personally, and I think as an internal team, feel that well, at the outset, I don't know how confident we were in engagement in this process. I think because there had been such a big gap between the previous survey, some perceived lack of action potentially from the previous survey, and the fact that we're running a lot of additional activities to hear our staff voice, it was deemed by some colleagues across the university that unnecessary. However, we are over the moon with that 60% response rate, but beyond that, I think it was the engagement in the action planning that really sort of has overwhelmed us in a sense. It's people felt really engaged in the process. Even now, having come up with the action plans in October, I am inundated with questions around what further support can areas get to help them with their action planning? How can we measure? What does the staff survey look like over the coming years? So really, I think just the fact that we have such engaged staff in this process is amazing. Visibility, I won't go into too much detail because we've covered it, but just having the visibility from our King's senior leadership team has been a real driver in our success here. And I think if I was to offer any advice, it would be get the senior leadership team on board and leading a lot of those engagement sessions. Flexibility, so I spoke about us internally as a team being around the table and actually understanding that our plans maybe weren't meeting the requirements of the university, and actually the fact that we were able to adapt and adjust our processes to support that, I think is something that's really benefited the process. Another area that I think I'm personally very proud of is the fact that we've been able to convert some of the naysayers, and there were naysayers at the beginning of the process. I think there was a point when we were sharing what the insights to action would look like at an all-staff forum in November, and we invited one of our executive deans to come along and talk in that session. They, from the outset of the survey, were very reluctant to ask any questions across their faculty. They were not confident in the process, but at the end of the process, they then stood up in front of the university, admitted that they weren't confident in the process, but then completely changed how they viewed the process, understood the benefits, and are still to this day asking for more support and more engagement, either through People Insight, through the additional workshops being offered, or through some of the support we offer in our organisational development team. Then insights, it's looking at what the data, so it's the correlation between the staff survey results and what that actually means beyond just what we're seeing in the dashboard. So I've got an example here. So staff that feel they belong have gone on to say they have a personal sense of achievement at King's. They have a positive relationship with their line manager. They're willing to undertake more professional development. And then finally, partnership. So I think the partnership with People Insight has been fantastic. I think you've been very responsive, and just the consultancy you provided us has just been you can't measure it, basically. I think this is what's really added value beyond just delivering a staff survey. I think it's the support we've then got in driving some of the action plans has been phenomenal. What we have done differently? Personally, I think if we reconsidered when to deliver the staff survey, there was a lot of pressure to deliver it in June. I think with some of the external factors, such as some of the industrial action, I think we would have shifted that potentially to November. And as a consequence, that would have allowed more time for us to complete the preparation phase. So we would have thought more about our data scope. We would have thought more around the question set, but that's just lessons to learn. I think we'll take that on board for the next year. We would have created a more efficient, robust process for decision making. I think at times we felt like there was maybe too many cooks. There was potentially too many opinions coming in, and that slowed down some of our decision making process, especially in the lead up to the delivery. And then beyond that, I think it's because we had such engagement from our senior leadership team, it's also trying to work out what's the most efficient way to get their time. Another suggestion I would then, if I was to do it again, I'd probably say if we align the organisational wide action plans with the local action plans, it would have been more cohesive. I think a lot of areas are looking centrally to see what support they get to deliver their local action plans. And then another factor that we're still dealing with to a certain degree, so we've not sussed this by any means, but it's working out ownership of key activities, not just within the team internally, but also across the organisation. Who is responsible for the organisational action plans? I think sometimes within the organisational development team, a lot of people are looking at us to deliver those actions, where in fact they should be owned by senior leadership. And then just quickly, just looking at what's next. So at the moment, we're doing a Vice Chancellor Roadshow, sharing what the organisational action plans look like. In the summer, we'll be doing some measuring of what those action plans, well, the success of those action plans. So as Sue alluded to, we haven't quite branded it yet, but I'm going to go with Your Voice Counted, in which we're just going to get success, some of the successes across the university and progress reports. And then in November, we'll be running a pulse survey. And so we'll be ramping up the engagement campaign in the autumn. That's our journey. I appreciate that was very brief, but there's a lot there. And what I would encourage, if you do have any questions or you just want to speak to us about our journey, here are our contact details. Please reach out. I mean, we want to bounce ideas off you as well. So thank you for listening. And if anyone's got any questions, please ask.
Thanks, Laurie and Sue. That was great, and it's been an absolute pleasure being part of this journey for me, from the whole team, as it is with many of the universities, most of the universities we work with, beginning this journey and going through the discussions on procurement, and then to where we are now. It's the reason we do what we do, so it gives us so much engagement and satisfaction. So thank you from the whole team. I know we've got time now to just have some questions, and we have had a few questions. So if anyone's got a question, who's listening in, who wants to pop it in the chat. But in the meantime, I'll just ask some questions that are coming up. 1 second. So the first one is about how do you tie in the data gathered through the survey with your standard HR data for analysis? So tying in data from the standard from the survey to your standard HR data.
Good question. And I'm going to be honest, we're still trying to work that out ourselves. I think what has helped massively is in the preparation stage, it was thinking about what is it, at what level do we want to be delivering these survey results? So I believe what has really helped us is taking the data from our HR management system, which is the gold source of organisational and people data, and using that as the foundation for what's being loaded into People Insight. Because the data is anonymous, we can't tie what's coming out of the staff survey with individuals within our management system. However, because we have the structures in place, and it's not just in terms of the org structure, but it's also in terms of role profiles, demographics, we can then take those high-level views, go into quite detailed information around the demographics, and then match it up with some of our own internal reporting.
Yeah, and if anyone's got any suggestions or what they've done, you know, either let us know or pop it in the chat as well. I think it is a topic area in the sector for sure. Sue, I just wanted to ask you, and I know there's a university on here who struggles with this, with paper surveys, and obviously you've shared some of the great work you've been doing with your non-office based staff. Is there any tips or anything to support just with those universities really trying to move away from paper?
Yes, so we had this discussion at King's as to whether we would include paper surveys, and ultimately decided not to for a variety of reasons. And I don't have them all at the top of my head now, but some of them were relating to very simple things like sustainability. Others were around, as I said earlier, people being very familiar with their own mobile phones. So, you know, even if somebody's not using a computer or a laptop on a regular basis, most people, including my 88-year-old dad, can navigate a phone and a few buttons. So I think having that sort of QR code and easy access that way is as good as a paper survey. We had also committed to share our results really quickly within days of the survey closing, and that wouldn't have been possible had we had paper surveys that we would have had to, you know, get transcribed, translated as well, because a lot of our survey was also available in Spanish and Portuguese. So that was another reason. Yeah, and as I say, we sort of gave as many opportunities to non-desk-based people to complete the survey as we could, really, in other ways, you know, through having these things like computer rooms, and I know that other places have kiosks and things like that they set up for staff. So.
And interesting that Suzanne's asked about how staff were feeling in terms of using the QR code and putting their staff number. Did you have anything that came back in terms of, you know, staff concerned about putting in their ID number?
No, we didn't. I think, you know, that was a lot of the work around the confidentiality and people understanding that the results were going straight to People Insight, that, you know, we've made numerous assurances about sort of confidentiality, really. We also had a helpline in place that was for staff who might not know their staff number because they don't use it on a regular basis. But that was, I think we had very few calls to that, actually. Most people were okay with that.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I've got a couple more questions that have come in. So Helen's asked about if there is a prescribed, did you have a prescribed format for the action planning? Or was it locally sort of determined? Don't know.
So we used, shall I start and then you can continue, Laurie? We used a template that People Insight provided for us, really. And that was guidance, and most of our documentation is guidance, really. It's there if people want to use it, but we wanted to give areas autonomy, really, over how they presented their action plans.
Yeah. Okay. And then one that's coming from Lucy is, you said that you had great engagement from managers and leaders during the action planning phase. Did you do anything in particular which helped them engaged with the process, to help to keep them engaged with the process? So the managers and the leaders, was there anything in particular that they did to keep them engaged?
Not so much. Sorry, I was just going to say. We've run a couple of all-staff forums throughout the process. I think for me personally, having been on a lot of these coaching sessions, I think that was the key, having this hour with yourselves at People Insight, where local areas had the opportunity to bring their leadership team, review the results, and actually have that discussion, what the results mean in reality for that area. And then it was very informal sessions, but it was an opportunity to just bounce ideas around. And I think that really engaged our staff in the whole process.
Yeah. Okay, I'm conscious of time. Is there any final question before we move on? I'm just flicking to the last few slides. Well, hopefully everyone's found that really insightful from Kings. Any questions, please, reach out and ask. Anything that comes to mind afterwards. Just to basically say, whilst I'm getting to the slide, in terms of thank you for taking part, Laurie and Sue, in this. We're going to be planting 200 trees as a result of you coming on today. So I know you've done loads of work to get everything together. So thank you. We really appreciate it, and a good opportunity to reflect on the programme. And also there's going to be a tree planted for every attendee who's on the call today. So that's at least an extra 50 trees, I would say. It's 250 trees as a result of joining today. I finally just wanted to mention in terms of the UCEA report. So if you are a regular to our Learn and Shares, then you'll know that we've been working on a UCEA report and it's now available. So it's been published. It's looking at what it's like working in the university sector overall, using all of our benchmark data, a really strong benchmark database. There's a link there, and it tells you some of the things that are overall as the EVP for the sector, things to nurture and to develop. So it might be worth a look to see how you're comparing if you've got your some survey data coming through. I mentioned about the trees. And say thank you. And just to really say that the next Learn and Share, as I mentioned, is the 16th of April, so pop it in your diaries, with Durham University. And yeah, we look forward to any feedback, comments or questions that may come through. So thanks very much again for joining today. I hope you found it really useful and interesting.